Welcome, it's Christopher Taylor with Sovereign Harmony. It's Sunday morning, July 20th. So we're going to go over July 20th to the 26th this week in astrology. A couple of pretty significant things happening this week. First, we'll start with the Mars and Venus square that are also going to involve the moon's nodes. And then we'll talk about the new moon in Leo coming up at the end of the week, all happening while Mercury is retrograde right now in Leo. So Mercury went retrograde July 17th. Just a few days ago. It's going to be retrograde till August 11th in Leo the whole time, and we're going to have this new moon that kind of sets the stage in a way for that energy and what's going to unfold from there. But anyway, starting with Venus and Mars. So what we have to start the first few days of this week is we've got the North Node in Pisces, South Node in Virgo. Okay, they've been moving through those signs since January, and we have Mars first of all coming up on the South Node in Virgo, followed by Venus squaring both the North and the South Node from Gemini. First things first, so Mars in Virgo on the South Node. So this is speaking to the idea of becoming aware of certain habits and actions that we're taking, or that we have been taking, that we might need to rethink. Okay, so it might not be serving us anymore in ways that it might have before in the past. That's really what it comes down to. So paying attention here in the first few days of this week to, what are we just doing because it's what we always do, and how could we do it different? Okay, and then that Venus in Gemini that's squaring the nodes is that opportunity to open up options. It's kind of like, think of, Venus as, being valued, what we value. And this is kind of saying, we deserve or we're worthy of options. Okay. So right as we're looking at, what we're doing that isn't working, we can consider options at the same time. So it really kind of works together to say, how can we do this differently? What are our options? And, open ourselves up to being worthy of those other options, not having to say, well, this is just the way it is for me. Okay. And then those planets are going to form a square to each other Tuesday, Wednesday time frame. So Venus, Gemini, to Mars and Virgo. And what's interesting about this is if we go all the way back to the beginning of that cycle, so when Venus and Mars join each other, that starts the Venus-Mars cycle in the conjunction, then they move through, the phases, so the waxing square, then they oppose each other, then they form their waning square, and then they'll join each other again. So where we're at in this cycle is in the waning square, so it's the last square before they join each other again. When they first joined each other to start this cycle, that would have been in late February of 2024. So about almost a year and a half ago. Okay, so think back a year and a half ago, late February. So getting late winter into the early spring of 2024, Mars and Venus conjunct in Aquarius. This was the start of like a new creative project, new relationship, something that's different relative to ourselves. So considering something different, not sure where to fit it. Okay, we don't really have the boxes for it when it arose here in the spring of 2024. When they formed their waxing square, their first square, that was in late August of 2024. So about 6 months after they initiated the cycle. And what's interesting about that is that at that time, Venus was in Virgo, about 22 degrees of Virgo, and Mars was at about 22 degrees of Gemini. And why that's interesting is because right now with the waning square, they are reversed, and they're at about 21 degrees, so within a degree of each other in reverse. So in this case, we had with the waning square, we have Venus in Gemini, Mars in Virgo in a square. Back in late August of last year, about 11 months ago, they were reversed. So just an interesting concept that we're weaving in a similar theme of, considering our habits and considering other options, but, using our creative juices to figure out how we can change from where we are to where we want to go. Okay, so that waxing square happened in late August. Then they opposed each other in December. So during the holidays of last year, they were in their opposition. That was the culmination phase. So we had the initiation in February, the waxing square, which is the building phase, and then the culmination happened in December. And then that period between the culmination and now was extra long. Okay, because it's, that was in December. We're here in late July at this point. So a little extra long, and that's because of the fact that we had a retrograde of Venus and Mars. So they kind of wanted to come into a square in early March, but they weren't quite exact because, Mars is just starting to head direct, Venus is starting to go retrograde, and then they formed a trine to each other in May, and then we finally get to this waning square phase here, as we are now. Okay, so things are winding down for that whole cycle that started a year and a half ago, and it won't be finished until they join each other again, and that'll be in early January, in conjunction with a full moon in Cancer that'll happen just after the new year. So keep an eye out for that. So we're still unwinding this cycle, and this is that turning point this week where we're turning the corner from that culmination, that extended culmination, into the phase out, the wind down of it, okay? So that's going on. Then we have the new moon in Leo, while we have Mercury retrograde in Leo. And the word that comes to me when I think of this is gestation, okay? Because what this new moon in Leo is doing is it's opposing Pluto in Aquarius. So again, Pluto's in that new sign, less than a year. It's been in Aquarius for good. It's going to trine the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries, and it's going to form a sextile to Uranus and Gemini. So all the outer planets in their new signs are getting hit with aspects from this new moon. And again, those are going to be permanently in those signs, all of them together, when we get into the spring of 2026. So this is a gestation with Mercury going retrograde. So we're reviewing kind of our expression, okay? We're reviewing where our heart lies in a lot of ways, and we're really just getting ready for next year. Okay, so we're resetting things so that when 2026 happens, we're ready to go. Okay, so there's a lot about this week's energy that doesn't culminate completely until we get into the first couple months of 2026. So we have that Venus-Mars conjunction that will happen in early January that will close out the cycle that we're in now. And then we'll have the a full moon in Leo that will close out this whole Mercury retrograde in Leo, new moon in Leo that's stimulating these outer planets in the new signs, and that'll happen in early February, like late January, early February. And then immediately following that, a few weeks later, on February 20th, that is when Saturn makes its exact conjunction to Neptune, and so we've entered this new era of societal evolution. And then we have Uranus and Gemini with it, Pluto and Aquarius with it, okay? And it's all happening, and it's all ready to be happening at that time. But think of right now as the gestation. Think of right now as going inward, of winding out that last creative cycle with Venus-Mars. We're winding that down as we finish the rest of this year, and we are gestating what we're going to initiate in terms of our expression, our true individual expression in this new evolving society. That's really what it comes down to. So we don't have to have all the answers right now. That's really what the theme is here. We're going to know what to do with this energy in 2026. But right now, it's just about kind of unwinding some things, going back to that creative burst that we got maybe in the spring of 2024, and that we didn't know what to do with, right? We're going to figure out kind of where we can anchor that in between now and in January. And then knowing that this society is evolving and that we have to change with it. And what is our new expression in that society? That's what we're gestating here now with the new moon in Leo, anchoring in all those outer planets, as well as the Mercury retrograde in Leo. So we can go within, figure out what expressions no longer serve, and then kind of go forward from there. So we'll wrap it up there. Tune in next week, on next Sunday, for the next week's outlook. If you want to get more daily input, you can always follow me on Facebook. You can always follow my YouTube channel as well for more detailed information, especially about that Saturn-Neptune conjunction that's happening in February of 2026 that we're getting tuned into now. Okay, and I have that webinar that I've done on there. Do check that out. It's Christopher Taylor - Sovereign Harmony. And if you have any questions, let me know. If you're looking to do a personal reading, looking at these energies, this Mars, Venus, this new moon in Leo, Mercury retrograde in Leo, how it fits into your chart, we can definitely do that as well. I'm doing a deal this summer. If you follow my Facebook, it's always in the comments all summer long. I'm putting the deal in the comments so you can look at that. So we will see you next week. And until then, have a great weekend.